Hey 5th grade, it's Ms. Gioka with your Flip Math lesson for today, 11-3. Today's objective is I can estimate the products of mixed numbers and fractions. So let's talk about this really quickly. We know what an estimate is. We talked about that a lot. And what is a product? Do you remember? A product is the answer to a multiplication problem. Here's our practice problem. Start off with, Katrina has 14 postcards that are each 3/8 foot wide. Estimate the width of all the postcards placed side by side. Okay, so I'm finding out that it wants me to estimate the width. So if all the postcards were placed side by side like this, then I have to estimate, well, how long is that going to be, or how wide would that be? My important information is that there are 14 postcards total, and each one is 3/8 wide. So I'm going to be multiplying the number 14 times 3/8. But it also says to estimate. So I'm not finding the exact answer, I'm estimating. I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can do that today. The first way is to use compatible whole numbers. So I can change this whole number right here to be a compatible number. What I'm going to do when I do that is I'm going to think about this number in the denominator. And I'm going to think about, well, what number is a whole number that's easily divided by 8? Because I know at the very, very end, when I simplify, I'm going to be dividing by 8. Or I'm going to be looking for things that will simplify easily. And dividing by 8 would be the easiest way. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to think of, well, what would be easily divisible by 8? Well, 16 is a good whole number because it's easily divisible by 8. Okay, so I changed my whole number down here. You can see I've multiplied 3/8 times 16 now, and 16 is the same as 16 over 1. So now I can do my multiplication. So 8 times 1 and 3 times 16. Okay, and I know 8 times 1 is 8, and I'm going to do, if you don't know, 3 times 16, which I can do 2 times 16, but 3 times 16 in my head is not quite as easy. So that's 3 times 6 is 18, carry the 1, 3 plus 1 is 4, so 48. Okay, now I can do 48 divided by 8. See how easy that is to simplify? 48 divided by 8 is 6. So my estimated answer is that it's going to be 6 feet for all 14 postcards. Okay, so that's one way you can do it. Just change the whole number to a compatible number that's easily dividable by the denominator. Okay? Another way you could do that is to make a compatible fraction. So this time, instead of changing the whole number, I'm going to change the fraction to a compatible fraction that is going to give me a number in my denominator that'll be easily dividable or into 14, okay? So I thought, well, 3/8 is really, really close on the number line. I'm thinking about my number line here. Got 0 and 1, and here's 1/2, so our benchmark fractions. Where would 3/8 be on the number line? Well, I know that 4/8 equals a half. So if I'm talking about 3/8, I know it's not quite a half, so it's going to be right about here. Okay, so which fraction would that be closest to, or which number would that be closest to? Well, it's going to be close to 1/2. So I've changed my fraction from 3/8 to 1/2. You can see it down here. So now I'm going to multiply 1/2 times 14. So I'm going to change that. So I've got 14 over 1, and 1. I multiply the top numbers, then I multiply the bottom numbers. So 1 times 14, and 2 times 1. That's going to give me 14 over 2, or 14 divided by 2, which equals 7. So doing it this way, I got about 7 feet, which is close to my previous answer of about 6 feet. Okay, so you can see, just like before, whenever we estimate, we can always get some different answers. They should be pretty close, though. All right, well, how can you use rounding to estimate the products? Okay, so we're finding more products of fractions and mixed numbers. Okay, so not just fractions and whole numbers, but fractions and mixed numbers. Here we go. Let's take a look at this one. So we've got 3 3/4 times 14 1/2. what you need to always do is round the nearest whole numbers. That's going to give you, I think that's the easiest way. Okay, so I like to round to the nearest whole number. So I'm going to look at this fraction. I'm going to think to myself, okay, 3/4. Where is that on my number line? And what whole number is that close to? So I've got 0, got 1, I've got a half. So 3/4 goes right here in the middle. And we always round, if it's right in the middle, we always round up. So 3/4 is going to be close to 1. Okay? It's closer to 1 than it is to 0, right? It's a long ways away from 0. So I'm going to round it up to the nearest whole number, and the nearest whole number is 1 more. So let me erase that. 3/4 is really close to 1, and I already have 3, so I'm just doing 3 plus 1 right here. This is going to be like 3 plus 1. Well, that equals 4. Okay, so I've got this section taken care of. Now I've got 14.5. Okay, so half on my number line. So we've got 0, 1, 1/2. Right in smack in the middle. If it's smack in the middle, we always round up. So it's closer to 1 than it is to 0. So that's going to be 1 more. Okay, so now I've got 14 plus 1 more, which equals 15. So now I'm going to be multiplying 4 times 15. I know that 15 times 2 is 30, so 4 times 15 must be 60. Okay, so I got my estimated answer. Now I could also do it if I just have fractions instead of a mixed number. I could still round to the nearest whole number. Let me show you. So I've got 5/6 on my number line. I'm going to think of where 5/6 would be. I've got 0, I've got 1, and I've got 1/2. I know that 3/6 equals 1/2. So 5/6 is going to be greater than that. So it's probably going to be somewhere around here. So that's really close to 1. So I'm going to round it up to 1. Okay, let me erase that. Get that out of the way. So I'm going to round 5/6 up to 1. That's going to be my new whole number. And then I'm going to round 3 7/8 to a number. So I think of my number line. I'm going to ignore the 3 for a second and just think about 7/8. 0, 1 1/2. I know 8/8 equals 1 whole. So 7/8 is probably going to be a little less than that. So just a little less goes right there. But still, it's closer to 1 than it is to 1/2. So I'm going to round it up to 1. Okay? Okay, so I've rounded up 7/8 to 1 whole. So now I've got 3 plus 1. That equals 4. So now I've got 1 times 4. And 1 times 4 equals 4. I've got my answer. Okay, so it's not too hard. It's pretty much the same thing we've done before, just rounding up fractions and then multiplying them. All right, so let's give it a little bit of practice. So we're going to estimate each product. That's all we're doing today is we are estimating, which means if you find the actual answer, you're doing it wrong, because we need to estimate, and we're finding the product, which is the answer to a multiplication problem. So first one we'll try is 3/4 times 19. Okay, so I'm going to think about this number 4, and I want to change the number 19 to a compatible number that is easily divisible by 4. So I know that 20 is very close and is easily divided by 4. So now I'm going to change this to 3/4 times 20. Put 20 over 1 and then multiply. So I'm going to have 3 times 20 and then 4 times 1. And 3 times 20 is 60. And 4 times 1 is 4. So now I've got 60 divided by 4. And I know that 60 divided by 4 equals 15. Okay, you can go ahead and do the division if you needed to figure that out. Okay? Let's try another one. 35 times 5/9. So this time I'm going to think about Let's try it again with doing it the same way. I'm going to think about my number 9 and think about numbers that can go into. And 35 is not divisible by 9, but 36 is. So I'm going to change 35 to 36 because I know I can divide that by 9. So now I'm going to have 36 times 5 9ths. I'm going to put that over 1. So now I've got 36 first times 5 9ths. So I'm going to rewrite it, 36 times 5 and 1 times 9. And I'll know I'll be able to divide it by 9. So now I'm going to multiply 36 times 5. 5 times 6 is 30, carry 3, 15, 16, 17, 18, there we go, 180 on top, and 1 times 9 is 9. Now I can divide easily. I'm going to ignore the 0. 18 divided by 9 is 2, then annex that 0 back on, and that equals 20. Okay, let's try a different way. Let's change the fractions to whole numbers this time. So now I've got 21 3/4 times 1/5. So I'm going to change the mixed number. 21 3/4. I know 3/4 on my number line. 0, 1/2, and 1. I know 3/4 is right here, so I'm going to round it up to 1 more. So I'll have 21 plus 1 more, which equals 22. And then I'm going to think about where 1/5 is on my number line. Well, 5/5 is 1 whole. 2 1/2 would be 1/2, so 1/5 is going to be really close to there. So it's going to be like closer to a half than it is to 1. So I'm going to change that to a half because I don't want to change it to 0, because if I change it to 0, then I'll have 22 times 0, and that's going to equal 0, and I know that's not a good estimate. So I'm going to change it to a half. That'll be a little bit easier. So I've got 22 times 1/2. I'll put that over 1 and rewrite it. So I'll have 22 times 1 over 1 times 2. And that's going to equal 22 halves. And 22 divided by 2 is 11. Okay, let's try this one. Same thing, 3 times 6 4/5. So I'm going to change 6 4/5 to a whole number. And I'm going to think on my number line between 0, 1/2, and 1 where 4/5 is. I know that 5/5 is 1 whole, so 4/5 must be really close. It's probably about right there. So I'm going to round it up to 1. So now I've got 6 plus 1 here. That's going to equal 7. So I'll have 3 times 7, and that's going to equal 21. Okay? So now it's your turn. Give this one a try. Number 1, 1/4 times 25. Make sure that you estimate. Okay, so you can see I changed 1/4 to 1/5 because I wanted a number. 25 is a good number to divide with, and I know that 4 can't go into 25, so 5 can go into 25, so I changed it there. And you could have changed it a different way, but we should get a similar answer. It's pretty close. And then after I did all the multiplication, I got 25 over 5, which is fancy division, for 25 divided by 5, and that equals 5. So your answer should be close to 5. It might be 4, 5, or 6, but it should be pretty close. Number 2, 70 times 5/8. Okay, so I looked at my denominator 8, and I said, well, 70 can't be divided by 8, but 72 can. So I changed my whole number to 72. Then I did my multiplication after I've changed 72, and I got 360 over 8. So I did some division over here real quick, and I can see that 360 divided by 8 is 45. So your answer should be close to 45. Number 3, 5 5/6 times 8 1/9. Estimate that product. Okay, I rounded 5 5/6 to 6, and 8 1/9 is closest to the number 8, so I multiply 6 times 8, and I get 48. Number 4, 11 7/8 times 4 1/3. Estimate that product. Okay, so I changed 11 7/8 to 12 and 4 1/3 to 4 because that's what it would round closest to, a whole number. And then I multiply 12 times 4, and that equals 48. Right, this is your last problem. The Willis Tower in Chicago is exactly 1,432 feet tall. If you took an elevator 3/4 of the way up, about how far from the ground would you be? Go ahead and solve this problem, and I'll check it with you in a minute. Okay, so I know it's asking me about how far it is from the ground, and my important information is 1,432 feet, and then we've gone 3/4 of the way up. Okay, so now you may have a different exact answer different answer that I have, but that's okay as long as we're close. Okay, so what I did is I changed both numbers to compatible numbers. So I changed 1,432 to 1,400. I just rounded that one down, and then I found a compatible number through 3/4 because I was thinking about, well, what can I divide that by? Well, ends in 0, so I know that can be divided by 5. So I changed 3/4 to 3/5, and then I multiplied those together, and I got 4,200 divided by over 5, which is divided by 5, and then did the division, and I ended up with about 840 feet. Okay, so your answer should be pretty close. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.